Welcome to the Sweet Science of Fighting podcast. Today, returning guest, James Ramsey. Welcome back, James.
Thank you for having me on.
No, thank you for coming back. If you're watching this on YouTube with the video, my lighting is a little off. I moved my office downstairs, so bear with me with my video lighting. But regardless of the podcast, you're listening to this anyway. You're not watching me. So who really cares? Let's get to the information. But you were on, it must have been 2 years ago now, James.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago when I was, it was right after I designed 3 studies for breath hold physiology with pulmonary breath by breath with the mask to see everything that's going on in the lungs, and then near infrared spectroscopy to look at oxygen saturation, blood flow, so on and so forth, like what Dr. Rusher did with his research. But he did it with world-class boxers. My research was going to be with general populations because that's all I had to work with.
Yeah, hey, still applicable and still valuable. But with the breath hold training stuff, I'm interested to go into that because you see it used every now and then. But do you want to maybe just break down some of the physiological reasoning? Why use breath hold training, or what is it? Let's just start with what is it, and then we can go to the physiological stuff and maybe if you can implement it or not.
So with the breath hold physiology, it's been a couple of years since I looked at the research because I changed my topic. And we'll get into that story. That's really interesting how I changed my topic to designing another 3 research. So I designed 6 studies for my PhD that I'm not done with. So
the joys of the PhD, eh?
Yeah, that's why I don't have hair in my head. Last time I had hair in my head, now I don't. But I didn't have nice hair anyways. But so it all comes down to, to elicit a training effect, a disruption in homeostasis, simply stated, right? We'll say a shock to the system, so the body has to adapt. That's all it comes down to. So a really interesting study, I believe I'm saying the name correctly, Relevance 2018 with elite rugby players. So they had them perform breath hold sprints. And I've done this myself. I never used it in a fight camp, but outside of fight camp, general preparation, specific preparation. I played around with a couple different models. So is what the Ruran study did. They exhaled before a 40-meter sprint. They would exhale. They would hold their breath. They would sprint 40 yards or 40 meters. And then they would exhale again as soon as they completed the sprint. And then they would, they wouldn't hyperventilate afterwards. They would try to maintain like a normal.
They would exhale, sprint, and then exhale again?
No, they would exhale.
Yeah.
Hold their breath while sprinting.
Wait, they'll exhale, and then all the air is out, and then sprint with the air out.
Yeah, with their mouth shut.
I gotcha. And then when they get to the end of the sprint,
they would exhale again.
Is that possible? I guess you don't get all the air out.
Well, it's been a while since I looked at the study, but yeah, that's essentially what they did. Exhale, they held their breath while they were sprinting, and then they exhaled again. I guarantee they were not running very fast. So for anyone who's tried this, I actually got a YouTube video somewhere where I actually did it with a hill, and I sound like I'm getting ready to die.
Oh, dude.
So it's pretty brutal, but it's what's significant with this study in 4 weeks. It significantly improved the repeat sprint ability in elite rugby players. What people don't understand is trying to improve sports performances in elite level athletes is very difficult. If you get a law of initial values, you get someone off the couch that hasn't done anything, it's really easy to improve their VO2 max or repeat sprint ability because they haven't done anything. But when you have elite level athletes that are trained all the time for their sport, trying to improve sports performances is very difficult.
Interesting. Okay. So what is the physiological reasonings then do you see or that you've read or implemented to account for these improvements in repeated sprint ability?
I remember when I was studying for my PhD comprehensive exams, in Canada, you have to take a qualifying exam to prove that you're worthy and you can design your studies, which is a lot of fun. They give you 3 months, you read 10 hours a day, then you take a written exam, and a week later, you got to stand in front of these high-level researchers as they rip your answers apart, ask you questions, so it was a terrifying experience. Sometimes you need to wear a Depends for it, That's, yeah. It's Jamnick 2020, and they discussed that it's been 4 years since I read the paper. They were talking about it's probably, the lactate as the primary driver for eliciting, mitochondrial adaptations. So, Jamnick 2020 cited some papers from, referenced some papers in that 2020 publication that it's the lactate, because it's not that lactate causes fatigue. That's a myth. It's ejected with its co-transporter hydrogen. And, but it all comes real simple. It's that disruption to homeostasis. The body's like, oh, we got to adapt. I will have to say that sprint protocol, I remember how to spell the name, WOORONS 2018 et al. Just type in breath hold training, rugby players. There's been a lot of blogs on it. I will say it's not for general populations. It's very, very, very miserable. Like, I've wrestled 30 years. I've wrestled a lot of All-Americans and people who wrestled internationally for medals, and it's on par in terms of misery. It's on par with that. It's not something.
That sounds horrible.
You're not going to get a general population individual and have them do it. Okay, it's miserable.
At what point would you apply some of this? Because you mentioned, obviously, if you're exhaling and then sprinting and exhaling again, quality of that sprint is probably not going to be very good.
Yeah, you're not running that fast. It's just you're building up such an acidosis in the body.
Yeah,
that the body has to adapt. You're building up so much metabolic waste that the body wants to be more efficient, so it's going to elicit an adaptation. So
is that something then? If your goal was to obviously maintain quality and speed, you wouldn't use this.
No,
if your goal was just like, okay, this guy he needs the conditioning, like he fatigues quickly and fights, whatever it is, then you would implement something like this.
Yeah. Like I said, I never used it in fight camp. I used it as like a general prep or specific prep, playing around, so on and so forth. Of course, Cal Diaz has that great breath hold circuit training with the dumbbells.
Is that the contralateral?
Yeah, the contralateral with the breath hold. I mean, you can also do it with, an Aerodyne or a rower. There's another study by that same group where they had a metronome or a timer, and they would do a little mini breath hold. I believe it was every 4 seconds, every 4 or 6 seconds. And they saw significant disruptions to homeostasis. I don't remember what the metrics were because I haven't even looked at a breath hold paper in over 2 years, but it's definitely, but if you're a fighter, you want to do it while hitting a heavy bag, you know what I'm saying? Because you want to maintain your normal breathing or wrestling and stuff like that. You would want to do it like rowing, Aerodyne. I really like Cal Diaz's approach. I've used that a lot, so that's a good one.
Do you want to give just some quick guidelines for anyone listening who wants to try it? Like how long the protocol to do it. So say someone wants to do it on an Aerodyne or rower, like breathe out, and then how long should you hold it for? How long should the sprint be?
I want to do the runs one with the elite. I'm probably butchering the name. Yeah. If he hears it, he's probably gonna go. Oh,
I butcher so many researchers' names when I'm talking.
Like Sashamel with the Olympic weightlifting derivatives. I can't get that right. I want to do the exhale, hold your breath, and then exhale again. That one is on a scale of 1 to 10. It's an 11 in terms of misery. I've had some fighters text me, hey, mother effer, I just did that. These guys fight professionally. They're like, this sucks. I'm like, yeah, it sucks. That's why the participants in that study were elite level rugby players. And, those guys,
they had no choice.
Those guys are beasts. So, I mean, maybe with an Aerodyne or a rower, get a metronome timer. There's lots of apps. Get it on your cell phone, and like every, 4 seconds, just hold your breath briefly for like 2 seconds.
Hold your breath after you've breathed out.
No, just hold your breath.
Okay.
For general populations, they're not going to want to do that one in the study where you.
Okay, gotcha.
There's different levels. There's different levels of misery. There's certain things you have general populations do that you want. that you want to do with athletes and vice versa. This is definitely one of them.
So every 4 seconds, how long you're holding your breath there? So every 4 to 6 seconds, you're holding your breath.
Just like a brief breath hold.
Okay.
I'm trying
Just to
to
disrupt
remember.
your breathing while you're doing the
Yeah, to
exercise.
disrupt your breathing.
Interesting. Okay.
Someone in the cardiorespiratory lab where I'm studying, he went to dental school, Lim et al. He did a breath hold study with regulated breathing, held the breath 5 seconds for 5 seconds every 30 seconds, various conditions. There was a continuous with 5-second breath holds. And then there was a continuous where every 25 seconds they did a sprint. And then there was a continuous where every 25 seconds they did a sprint with a breath hold, with breath by breath and nears. So yeah, just disrupting your breathing pattern can be enough. Everyone's different. There's so much individual variability. One individual will adapt to this, so it's something you got to play around with. Maybe a portable lactate tester, because you can use lactate as proxy. It's like, okay, if you're lactate 17, yeah, you did something. It's funny because I ended up doing resistance training to failure for my next 3 studies. And
that's perfect segue.
Yeah. And I had some blood lactates that were 17, 18. One got 25, but wasn't able to finish the protocol.
Well,
He got blood lactate of 25. It's like, I'm not going to give out the details on what I did other than resistance training to failure. And, did some wind gates, did some sprint interval training, with males and females, comparing the responses in males and females. It was really interesting. But what's really interesting though, is every time I got a blood lactate, because blood lactate peaks 3 to 7 minutes after exercise. So I standardized, took blood lactate at 3 minutes. Every time I did blood lactate, they always gave me their middle finger. I'm like, give me a finger and alcohol swipe. They always gave me their middle finger. I don't know if I should take that personal or
because you just beasted them.
Yeah. I had lactates. Well, someone, this guy was shredded. His lactate was like an 8, I was like, okay. He didn't have much of homeostatic perturbations, but
What do you put that down to? Those differences? Is it just general
just
ability to be prepared?
Just how they train. That's the thing with general populations. You don't know how they train. Is this person lifting weights and they're like, oh yeah, I do 30 minutes of cardio in the evening. Is that 30 minutes cardio? Are they running 6 miles? You don't know.
Interesting.
I could be a former Navy SEAL. You just don't know.
So regarding resistance training to failure, that's often talked about just in terms of bodybuilding, muscle hypertrophy, but you're looking at it from a different stance, right?
Yeah, I looked at it from a cardiorespiratory response. There was an interesting publication that just came out in Nature Journals Reports, and they did back squat. They only did 65% of 1 repetition maximum. And the strong males, they only had males. The strong males reached 98% of their VO2 max at the 5th set. That's a significant.
Well, it took 5 sets?
Yeah, 5 sets. Yeah.
Of how many reps?
10 reps.
What's a failure? 10 reps.
Yeah.
So that's pretty close to failure.
Yeah. 65% of 1 RM for 10 reps. That's the thing. Like I posted about, using 1 repetition maximum can be very inaccurate. At 70% of 1 RM in the one study that I cited in the group, 70% of 1 RM, they did repetitions to failure. The range was someone got a low, could only do 9 reps, while someone else got 26 reps. That's why repetition to failure it can be all over the place. That's why I stopped using it. And I used the set rep best method. But the strong individuals, 65% of 1 RM, they got, 98% of your VO2 max. That's a significant, think about people that do German volume, what is it?
10 by 10.
Yeah, the 10 by 10. You do that with a 2-minute rest period, man. You get to that 4th, 5th set, you're huffing and puffing, you're at VO2 max. You got to figure that's at least 30 seconds, 40 seconds of work. And then you do a fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th set. What's the difference between that and doing Wingates? I mean, we've known since 2004 with the McMaster research that, repeated Wingates, with those training studies, repeated cycle ergometer sprints, high intensity, the training studies, I think they did 4 to 7, during the training study started off at 4. I think they went up to 7 sprints. It's just as effective as running continuously or performing continuous conditioning on a cycle ergometer for an hour. There's a power. There was a meta-analysis this year that, talking about, VO2 max and high intensity exercise, how it's, I believe it was talking about the superior method. I think a big problem is people, hit, sprint, all that all the time. But like with general populations, if they don't have that capacity to work hard, they're better off with steady state exercise. And then later on, in order to cause disruptions in homeostasis, and that's when they're going to have to include HIIT. You're not going to get some 50-year-old soccer mom off the couch and go have her do Tabatas. So that's a good way to lose a client or make an enemy.
So you talked about doing 10 by 10, say for example squats, similar potential outcomes to say doing repeated Wingates. Well, I can think of multiple negatives of doing 10 by 10 squats as part of a preparation. Time, muscle soreness, the eccentric damage, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that much volume. You'd better, you could also, instead of 10 by 10, do 10 by 5, but you immediately switch to say like a jump and pull up, a ballistic full body movement that's going to recruit a lot of muscle mass because you're like right there in the squat round. So a lot of times they have, where you can reach out, get the pull-ups and stuff like that. So that's a possibility. And it's high intensity when you're huffing and puffing, like you're running from a grizzly bear. If you're, yeah, I should post that video of me doing the, it was during the pandemic. There's this cemetery right by the woods in Ypsilanti where I hung out, and I videotaped myself doing the sprints. I held the camera.
In a cemetery.
Yeah. Because I was looking for a place with hills, and I'm like in Ypsilanti, there's like
hills and dead bodies.
Yeah, and dead bodies. Yeah, the neighbors are really quiet there. No one really talked to me out there. So, but yeah, it's really beautiful because you got the woods and you got some really nice hills. And so I did, I held the camera, like you could see me going up. It was probably like a 50-degree angle. I would go exhale, hold my breath, sprint up the hill while holding my breath. And upon completion, I exhaled again. And it sounded like I had bronchitis or something, asthma attack. It's like I'm saying, it's not something you want to use with general populations. But Kramer, in one of his books, Dr. Kramer, the legendary strength coach researcher, he discussed what a powerful stimulus circuit training is. There's a lot of different, there's if you do triceps, so, if you're doing squats and then you're sprinting to a pull-up bar, then you're sprinting, you do like dumbbell thrusters or sprinting to do bench press, and, you're doing that in a circuit, you're going to be huffing and buffing.
Is that, so ignoring general population, if we're talking to fighters and various athletes, would you use something like that, say, in replace of more traditional conditioning methods?
Probably not. No, there's a lot of really vicious, brutal things you can do, on an aerodyne or a rower, because you want it, because general populations, it's like, I'm going to be 51 years old. What am I going to eat in,
like masters everything. Just get on the gear and you got masters posture too.
Oh yeah. I just got to get my Gordon Ryan supplements.
Yep.
Then I can go eat. Yeah. No, athletes, you always got to keep it separate. Training athletes and work with general populations, they're two different things. You're focused on strength, power, and conditioning separate. You don't want to combine them because,
It's
so
too
I
general of a
wouldn't do it.
stimulus.
I wouldn't do it. I mean, outside of fight camp, if you just, avoid, if they have issues with running, the contralateral circuits by Cal Diaz are great, to build aerobic base and stuff like that. But, circuits, but then again, if you're working on strength endurance, you do 10 snatch pulls in a row, you're going to be huffing and puffing afterwards. You
That's
get a
killer.
couple, you get a couple sets in, so yeah. I don't think it'd ever replace conditioning for athletes. It's just like an additive tool.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything else in the realm of training to failure that you've been reading about or implementing?
Drop sets.
Or high-intensity exercise? Drop sets?
Yeah, drop sets. Those can be fun. So yeah, let me give you the story. Might as well tell you the story on how I went from 3 breath hold training studies to 3 resistance training studies. So me and some folks in the lab had a little bit of an argument. I was like trying to say, yeah, bodybuilding's a powerful aerobic stimulus. So I remember a study from 1984 of Hakeem et al. I'm not saying that right. I'm not going to try to I'll butcher another name. Another researcher who's published a lot. He tested bodybuilders and, high level wrestlers. But what was interesting, the bodybuilders had VO2 maxes that were almost as high as the high level wrestlers. There's a couple other studies, I was like, it's like, there's no way that it's not a powerful aerobic stimulus. So we got an argument, we're like teaching assistants, teaching classes and stuff like that, teaching the labs and everything. So we got key card access. So we got some weights, got the cart, got a deadlift bar, took it up to the lab. And, I third set, I got to VO2 max, my VO2 max is like 4.2 liters and I got to 4.2 liters, and I showed my supervisor the data and he's like, hey, can you design another 3 studies? And I was like, yeah, because it's one thing. So the original 3 studies with breath hold physiology, that was more designed for like a high impact journal for physiology and stuff like that. Why, the stuff I'm doing now is more designed for sports performance, those type, sports performance journals, so on and so forth. And that's what I want to do with my career anyways. I don't want to do academia with the postdoc loop. You finish your PhD, do a postdoc for $30,000 a year and, try to a bunch more and do another postdoc until you eventually get a job as a professor. It's like, no, I'm going back to athletes. Being a UFC fighter who I was a striking and grappling coach for a long time, we're going to start producing some content.
Nice. That training to failure is interesting. There's a paper I think Eric Helms was on recently that was comparing training to failure versus 2 reps shy of failure, but it was for muscle hypertrophy and strength purposes. But an interesting conclusion on it was, if I remember correctly, the failure group had better fatigue resistance than the other group. So there's, as you mentioned, there's almost like some kind of peripheral conditioning effect trained to failure. That's not to say go squat and deadlift to failure, but for grapplers, if you're doing curls and triceps, the isolation stuff, maybe doing that stuff to failure every now and then could help improve fatigue resistance for grappling.
Yeah, there's something to it. Yeah, we need some more research, do some muscle biopsies and stuff like that. I don't think people realize how difficult it is to recruit participants for high intensity exercise. Yeah, I had some more than a few participants throw up. They got the mask on, their eyes get all big. It's like, oh yeah, okay, we gotta, obviously we disinfect everything in an acid, so on and so forth. But it was kind of messy cleaning up some of the things that happened. And then, it's funny because they show up, oh yeah, I told my friends about your study and they're interested, and then you never hear from their friends, So yeah, I threw up, don't do it. But yeah, especially like the one, it was really interesting. I tested this one participant, very strong powerlifting individual. And I had him do, during playing around pilot testing. And I had him, okay, here's 75% of your 1RM. Can you get this 12 repetitions? And he couldn't get it more than the first set. He got it 8. The second set, he got it 7. And then the third set, he got 7 and he vomited with this mask on. Well, we took his blood lactate afterwards. His blood lactate was 25, and we did multiple strips, you know what I'm saying? With the lactate strips, you clean it, get a blood sample and then another one, which is kind of it was kind of difficult, with the lactate, with playing around with the deadlift straps and stuff like that, trying to get to it, stuff like that. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I've made a lot of friends in there in the lab.
Wasn't there something you looked at recently around people who sit like in a deadlift sit-up, but did you see a decrease in muscle oxygen saturation just from being in their sit-up?
Yeah, so that's something we notice. Like some people will kind of like stiff leg. They'll just bend over with their leg straight and put the deadlift straps on. Because the near-infrared spectroscopy probe goes right on the vastus lateralis, right here on the side of the leg, and don't see much of a change. But some like and this is how I do it as well. I squat down, I get in a deep squat, and they notice that my oxygen saturation decreased, my blood flow decreased, my deoxyhemoglobin went up. And the cool thing about yours is you see all this stuff in real time as it happens. The signal is instantaneous.
So the practical application is don't squat down to put your sit-ups.
I mean, it depends. If you're doing high repetition, if you're doing trying to deadlift something like 15 repetitions and you squat down and you have your legs bent like this, you know what I'm saying, where they get like real deep squat, there's gonna be a lot of desaturation, so that may impair deadlift, because once you start deadlifting anyways, there's a compression and there's a reduced blood flow temporarily anyways. So it could potentially have a negative effect, but we don't know. We've only done a couple studies on that.
Interesting. And I know we talked briefly about VO2 kinetics as well, I think, on the first podcast. We're interesting to go into it again. So I feel like I have a better understanding now, so I could hopefully ask better questions as we go through it.
So basically, VO2 kinetics, that's the dynamic VO2 response, volume of oxygen uptake, to the onset and to the offset of exercise. The quicker or the small, we use a time constant. It's called tau. It's just a number. That's all it is. And the smaller the number, right, the better it is, because it's how long it takes to reach 63% of the amplitude, how long it takes you to get to a high point. I just call it a high point. Yep. And the smaller the number, the better. And it's really interesting. I remember Poole and Jones, they got a publication in Journal of Physiology 2012 discussing VO2 kinetics. It was like some female endurance athletes. So the average person has a VO2 kinetics of 30 seconds. It takes 30 seconds to reach, that certain amplitude, 63% of the amplitude. Well, it's 63.3, but, we'll just say 63. And it takes us 2 minutes to reach steady state, steady state VO2. These females in this one study, it really stuck out. They were elite level endurance. Their time constant was 10 seconds, and they were able to reach steady state in 30 seconds. Yeah, because they were able to turn their aerobic energy system on much quicker. It goes down to specificity.
So let's see if we can break this down further. So what practical implication does that have for someone listening to this? Okay, maybe let's start VO2 kinetics and VO2 max then. So we talk about VO2 kinetics in the steady state.
VO2 max VO2 max is, the maximal capacity of your body to deliver oxygen and the maximal capacity of your body, and this is key, to utilize that oxygen. How big your gas tank is, and that varies from sport to sport. There's a lot of, like standards and, for certain athletes, but VO2 max, I don't focus on endurance, like marathon and stuff like that. But I have read that in some studies, it's not always a predictor. Some will have a VO2 max of 84 relative, VO2 max of 84 milliliters kg a minute, while others will be like 64. So, and it's, I don't think anyone's really established what a VO2 max you should have if you're, for example, an MMA fighter, because some of the UFC athletes have VO2 maxes that were off the charts, but also MMA, it's not just aerobic, because those explosive combinations. So, for example, you throw an explosive combination, and you circle around for 10 seconds, that's explosive combinations anaerobic. It's that first energy system, that ATP-PC, and then it's replenished while you're replenished with the aerobic energy system. So you have to have a highly developed aerobic energy system. But how big should that be? I don't think anyone's quantified that. I would have loved to have done research with MMA fighters, in Canada, but it's trying to get the participants in the lab. At home, I don't think people realize how difficult it is to design a study, get the participants in the lab. It's
offer the money. You have to pay them.
Yeah, you got to have that in your IRB. Yeah, if your supervisor doesn't want to pay money, then yeah. Or if participants find out that their friends vomited in the lab, because it's really fancy exercise, it's like, good luck. You got to wait till next semester till there's new students in the classroom that haven't heard about the study, so. But I was fortunate. So I was able to get a large number of males and females, for my studies, for my resistance training and my high intensity exercise studies. Not going to give the details on it, because I still got to publish it. So I ran out of funding because, I changed topics and had to get surgery, had to come back to Michigan. And then during the course of that, I ran out of funding. So, yeah.
We'll hope to get eventually it's published, and we'll have to bring you back on as well.
Yeah, once I get everything published, I'll come back on and discuss everything
100%.
more in depth. But I don't want to tip my hat what it was, because some of them might listen to it. They might be a master's student. I run down to IRB, told their supervisor, "Oh yeah, I got a great idea." But I'll never forget that day when I hit, my VO2 max doing drop sets, with the deadlift. It was funny because I forgot to tell this part. Right next to the cardiorespiratory lab, our bathroom is literally 5 meters away. That's it. And it was funny because another PhD candidate who I worked with, who helped me with my research, he's like, "Oh, James, keep the mask on. That way we can see the epoch." I was like, I had to get it off and run to the restroom. I think I started off. You've seen the videos of me bench pressing a couple of years ago, squat rack in my apartment. I think I started is what I did for the deadlift. It was I pulled 550 for a double, boom. We cut it to 500, pulled it for a double, boom. And then when we cut it to like 315, and I did like 15, 20 reps as a burnout, I was like standing around. And the trick was how we were able to get the weights to pull off. I put the initial bumper plates on a thicker padding. That way we could just strip everything off. So I didn't get much of a recovery at all. It was brutal. I thought it was more brutal than a VO2 max, because when you lift weights, heavy enough weight, your blood pressure goes up.
That's true. You talked about with the VO2 kinetics as well. So you could have, there are different VO2 maxes, you and I, but our VO2 kinetics will be different depending on a multitude of factors. And the person with the better or faster VO2 kinetics likely is better conditioned? Could I assume that?
They're able to turn on their aerobic energy system faster. Rashies, he's a famous researcher in the VO2 kinetics realm. My research isn't specializing on VO2 kinetics, but I have done analysis for the VO2 kinetics. It's a giant pain. Trust me, it's a pain. With the Origin Lab software, you're going to do the fits, find the time constant, stuff like that. Rashies said something, I haven't read this in 4 years and I'll never forget it, that when he was talking about VO2 kinetics and everything, the seeds of exercise intolerance are sown at the onset of exercise, or along those lines. It's something like, the seeds of fatigue are sown at exercise onset. So if you got a VO2 kinetics of like 60, which is, like really, really, really out of shape, an average healthy person has a VO2 kinetics like 25 to 30 seconds, you're going to produce a lot of those fatiguing metabolites
Gotcha.
And on the opposite end of the spectrum, someone has VO2 kinetics of 10 seconds, they're still going to produce fatiguing metabolites, but it's not going to be as profound.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So, is there a certain type of training that
just endurance? Like that study. I should post it in the group. God, I haven't read this in like 4 years, and I still remember that. With the females, their VO2 kinetics for like 10 seconds, and they were able to reach steady state in 30 seconds, which is shocking. Usually, healthy general population can take like 2 minutes to reach that steady state VO2. It's definitely an interesting topic. And
it is.
it's funny because originally, when you had to do this, you had to take Origin Lab software, this difficult software, and it'd take like 4 hours. And not my supervisor, but Dr. Kier, who runs the lab, he's been a PhD since like 2015. He has like 120 publications or whatever, something crazy, like high impact journals. He actually came up with an app for those that that have metabolic heart, and they get that Excel cell document that gives you everything. You just take that document, throw it in the app, and boom, it gives you your kinetics. I was like, God, it's like, wow, now like saving somebody 4 to 6 hours per participant. So
is that with VO2 kinetics as well? So I think with Andrew Usher's research, his first study looked at VO2. His first study on boxers looked at VO2 kinetics during sparring, pair work, and a bunch of other stuff, and they see where the off kinetics are impaired for recovery over time, and that further impairs the on kinetics, and it delays that time for the on kinetics to work for their oxygen. His latest study didn't show any changes in on and off kinetics. I think it was from the sprint interval training. So it's a matter of, you mentioned endurance, but even something like sprint intervals where you have that sharp desaturation of muscle oxygen, something like that is going to help you train that ability to turn it on faster.
I just remembered a study that I read with sprinters. It was sprinters. They compared sprinters with endurance athletes, and I think it was like a 3-minute run or something. But it was interesting because sprinters had faster VO2 kinetics. Because if you deplete that first energy system, right, the ATP, the phosphagen system, whatever you want to call it, I don't know why it has so many names. I just why? I came up with this. I just call it ATPPC. Okay. If you quickly deplete that, the faster you turn on the aerobic energy system. There were some research studies where they used pharmacological agents to impair the first energy system, and then the kinetics turned on faster. Yeah, I believe it was animals.
But that means you got to go harder to drain the system first.
Hold on. What was your question? You have to do what?
So you mentioned if you basically use up your resources, use up all the excess or floating around phosphocreatine, etc., for that energy system. If you use that up faster, you're saying that your oxygen kinetics or VO2 kinetics kicking faster, so you're quote unquote more aerobic in that instance. So that would mean then
Well,
you would want
you're
high
gonna
intensity exercise.
I mean, if you sprint really intensely, you're going to turn on the aerobic energy system faster based on this one study, but you're also going to produce, the fatigue and metabolites as well. So, but
Gotcha.
yeah, there was also the animal study where they, I think it was dogs. I can't remember. Yeah, dogs. They pharmacologically blocked, the first energy system. And then the aerobic energy system turned out faster. I can't remember if it was dogs or humans. You know how it is after 4 years, I've read so many studies, especially designing 3 breath hold physiology studies, for high impact journals, and then designing 3 other studies. So yeah, I've read too many studies.
I do have a question for you in the chat here from Emil, and in reference to lifting weights as a cardio stimulus. So he's asking, so I guess that will be high reps, short rest. We kind of touched on that briefly, like with that circuit training example you gave. He's saying, isn't that too fatiguing for cardio work in terms of being muscularly fatigued?
It can be. It can. You're not gonna. I mean, it's like, for example, like drop sets. I would probably only do like 3 drop sets per training study. You're not going to do German volume training with drop sets unless you're on Gordon Ryan supplements. Maybe I get a sponsorship with his supplement company, huh?
Yeah, that supplementation makes all the difference. Actually, funnily enough, I was looking for training videos to break down that I do each week, and I saw a Ryan Garcia video a couple of years ago, basically doing what you're talking about now as his conditioning modality. So it was 10 exercises, 30 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 10 rounds. But the exercises weren't like, there was a couple of traditional cardio, versus climate modalities, but then there was a machine squat. There was like a push-up. There was just the basic ab stuff, and just stuff that you wouldn't consider traditional cardio, I guess, training, but using stuff like that. And I was like, holy shit, imagine doing 30 seconds of squats, like with load, 10 rounds with only 10 seconds of rest with everything else going on.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
But I mean, we know he's on gear. So
yeah, I mean, you got to remember that. It's like I've been in MMA since God, 1996 down in Florida when it started.
Damn.
Yeah. Actually, a little Florida history. 1986, 1987. Yeah, Bobby Hughes, who's probably a 4th degree black belt now with Hobbs and Mora down there in Tampa. He was like the original. He was one of the original guys with the MMA. He was telling everybody, no, because it was back when it was style versus style. I can't remember the years, but he was like, no, don't just do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's like, I've been a striker forever also, and learned how to wrestle, and he did judo and stuff like that. But the point is, I've been around MMA for a very long time, and it's like 90% of the elite level guys in MMA, probably 95%, are on stuff, at some point in time. And plus, you've seen those studies with muscle memory. Your muscles have memory. So you take stuff and they remember, It's like, who was the UFC fighter that took steroids for a couple of years and he retired? Oh, Cowboy Cerrone. I guess he wanted to come back taking.
He wanted to come back, clean, get clean and come back.
He was like, yeah, I only took TRT. And I'm aware of. Yeah, and I'm
just physiological doses of TRT.
Yeah, if he was just taking TRT, I'm a werewolf or something, It's like, come on. It's like, I hope people are not that gullible. No, if you're going to do circuit training with weights, going from one exercise to another, that's fine. But I recommend Caldia's approach, the contralateral. That would be the best. That's what I would do. But like, you're not going to do like multiple, like probably 3 sets of drop sets, you know,
Yeah.
at most, you know, because you're getting so much volume in one set. You know, you're training to failure repeatedly in one, you know, in multiple sets. You know, that's a recipe for disaster. You know, but for people who are busy, you know, I mean, you know, do like dumbbell thrusters and immediately sprint to pull ups, you know, immediately sprint, you know, to burpees. You know, I mean, like Dr. Kramer said a long time ago, you know, I mean, he has so much research experience and, you know, working with elite level athletes and stuff like that, you know, he said it in his book, you know, I mean, circuit training is a powerful aerobic stimulant. So you got to do it correct as well. You can't just pick a light weight and you're sitting there, you know, doing some dumbbell presses, going, yeah, let's go to McDonald's after this. You know, you got to
It
be.
sounds like every pro boxing video that I've watched recently of their training is a circuit, light dumbbells, some other
I
crap.
mean,
And
that's the thing that doesn't make any sense. Okay. If you're a professional boxer, you're getting enough conditioning, sparring, and everything else. Focus on like the strength power qualities. You know
never
what I
happening.
mean? I
I
just,
got absolutely shredded on TikTok yesterday. I posted a reaction video to Devin Haney's sand hill sprints. Dude, the comments are insane. I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. Oh man. So I'm gonna post more just to see if
oh
I can
my
bait some more
God.
people.
Yeah. It's shocking how many people don't know what they're doing. It's like, I remember seeing it somewhere like with high school athletes, the stupid coach posted for the kids, all right, 10 sets of 10 squats, 100 burpees, 100 thrusters or something.
Is
And
that the
I'm like,
rap dog?
what? I wouldn't even do that with an adult, you know? It's shocking how many people there are out there giving advice and they have no clue what they're doing. It's like V-Shred, you know?
Oh yeah. That's a
See,
big market. That's a great marketing company, that one. He's
oh,
just I'm pretty sure
I
he's
loved
just
it. I love
the
that
face.
one. Capsaicin. Harvard study showed you lost twice as much fat compared to not taking it. Well, it's such a tiny little amount of fat that they lost. It wasn't even significant. So the fact that it was twice as much as something else that wasn't significant shows that, yeah, it's like, you know, yeah.
But he has 7 figures in his bank, or 8 figures in his bank account now. So
Hey, man,
he's happy.
hey, if the Liver King can get people to eat raw testicles and organs, you know, and have like a $20 million home, you can tell me. I just like, you know, you're not going to see people at the UFC Performance Training Center or something like that, which you're friends with those guys. They're not going to be doing 10 sets of 10 of drop sets. You know, I mean, this is what
They do breath hold though. They do breath hold.
yeah. Like I said, you know, I mean, from disrupting homeostasis or shock the body, send a shocking signal. We'll use layman's simple terms. Oh God, we got to adapt. You know, it does have value. You know, but you know, I remember, can't remember the name of the coach, but the saying I will never forget from when I started my first master's in strength and conditioning in 2012, you want to stimulate, not obliterate the athlete. You
Pretty
know,
sure that was that Christian Thibodeau?
who
Maybe.
knows?
I don't know.
I
I'm
don't
sure
know.
it was.
I'm 51. I've heard so much stuff over the years. So, you know, I
I've
can't
got
remember.
I've got a final question for you from a follow-up one. I think we pretty much answered it, but I'll throw it to you again anyway. Wouldn't doing strength work for lifting and conditioning with bike and running more? Basically, is bike and running more effective than using weights for conditioning?
Depends how, I mean, it depends how intense, you know what I mean? It all comes down to intensity and duration. You know, you're not going to be able to do squats at a high intensity, you know, for a long duration before your back is up, you know?
Yeah.
I
Or your
mean,
legs.
yeah, I mean, I just think of it as an additive thing, you know? So,
Gotcha.
yeah, I mean, you're doing conditioning with a cycle ergometer or an Aerodyne. You know, Aerodyne's better because, you know, you're also using your arms or a rower, you know, and during that period of time, if you're doing, you know, strength endurance, you know, doing sets of 10 to 12 repetitions, you know, with a snatch pull, you know, that's going to be an additive effect. So the Aerodyne would be like baking the cake and, you know, the snatch pulls, you know, doing strength endurance work would be, you know, the icing on the cake, you know. every little bit helps, but you don't want to be like, oh, you can get a powerful stimulus from lifting weights, so I'm going to use that as an aerobic stimulus. No,
Mm.
that's not what you want to do. I mean, yeah, if you have to, you got 30 minutes at home just to work out, get some light dumbbells. You do multiple dumbbell thrusters and, do pull-ups, dumbbell thrusters, pull-ups, sprints, typical like CrossFit kind of stuff. If that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do. But no, world-class athletes, a boxer, he shouldn't be doing things like this. They should be using the weights, for, maximizing strength to lay the foundation for the development of power, not as a conditioning tool. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're a professional elite level boxer and you need to use weights, or you are using weights for a conditioning tool, you need to get a new coach because they don't know what they're doing.
That's it. All of them on YouTube.
Yeah. It's crazy, the stuff, like, yeah, let's do a bunch of, farmer carries and really fatigue ourselves before we do, power cleans and push.
Yep.
Like, what?
Oh, funnily enough, I just watched a video that did exactly that. I just broke that down. It got published last week. That Rakic guy, he just competed in the UFC.
Yeah.
He did farmer's walk, and then he did hang power cleans with push press.
Yeah,
So
there's others. I'm like, maybe as a finisher, if you gotta, fit in some residual training, but my God, did he win his fight?
I don't know. I didn't get to watch the whole. I only got to watch the main event fight.
Yeah, that was something. That guy is. I can't pronounce his name. I
Poirier?
I wouldn't want to get hit by him. No one's knocked out Max, but him, boom.
Yeah.
I'd be
that was
really
pretty
interested to find out what his strength and conditioning coach has him do. I guarantee it's not.
I broke that as well.
What?
Yeah. I broke that down a little while ago. Max Holloway is actually pretty decent, just from the small clips that I've seen compared to some of the others. That Rakic guy, he lost to the Russian, and I can't even say his name.
Who can say what names? Yeah.
Dude, so many.
That was madness. Yeah, actually, it was your video I saw. Yeah, he wasn't even. I mean, he's a big guy, and he wasn't even power cleaning that heavy of a weight.
It was like 90 kilos, I think.
It was what?
I think it was 90 kilos. Wait, do you need pounds?
Yeah, pounds.
200, 205.
Yeah, that's not a lot of weight.
I think. No, it's not.
That's not a lot of weight.
I do that.
I would expect high school wrestlers to be able to do that. It's like, well, if you're fatiguing yourself, well, some high school wrestlers disqualify. But if you're fatiguing yourself with farmer walk, first, and then you're going out, you're going to be burnt out. You're not going to be able to develop that quality of power. You always have to separate. I think there's too much of a bodybuilding influence in sports performance. And it's like
100%. And powerlifting.
Yeah, it's two different things. First of all, it's not even power. There's no power. Is force times velocity. There's no velocity component. You see these people pull 800-900 pounds. They're not doing it in 2-3 seconds. No, it's taking a long time. It's maximal strength, and contractions in combat sports do not happen that slowly. If they do, you're losing.
That's a good point. James, let's wrap this up. Where can people follow you and see what you're up to?
My Facebook group.
Yes. Maybe I'll link that up. I'll link that up in the description. Wait, let me just double check the name for anyone who's just sitting there.
Yeah, we've changed the name a few times.
It is called, hang on, fucking Facebook. Exercise and Nutrition Science for Health and Sports Performance.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure if you just search exercise and nutrition science, actually, funnily enough, you replied to it 5 hours ago. There's a question about gym and volume training.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about that.
I mean, you can't, if I only had 30 minutes and I was going home, I only had 30 minutes at home to train, I might do like squats, superset it with pull-ups, you could do German volume training like that, but combat athletes, I can't justify a reason for it.
Definitely not. Way too much volume. No, this is perfect, James. And once you get those studies published and everything, we'll bring you back on and we can cover all those findings.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you for having me on.
Cheers.